Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're working on the T-38 again. If any of you guys remember the last video on the T-38, we had a stab to part the airplane. So anyways, it's been structurally fixed. Now I'm just doing body work. So it's been structurally fixed for probably about a month or more. I did some stuff to improve it. You can kind of see this faint outline here. I added an extra carbon spar through the tail. It just had this one before, and I stripped all the glass off the tail, put that carbon spar in it. I used a heavier glass than the last time, so the tail is really stiff now, which is very comforting because that was one of the other things I was always concerned about with the airplane. The stabs and the vertical were what I would consider the weak points on the plane. So I have those both addressed now. I changed the servo mounting setup, and I'll show that later once it's prettier. But anyways, I got the rudder fixed. I got a new hinge up here. It's all been bodywork. I got a little more Bondo to do, but it's pretty much the majority of the work is done. So anyways, I got to hit a few more spots up top, flip it over, finish the bottom. Then I'm going to do like a Bondo glazing putty over all this, and then it'll be ready for primer. And the stabs are pretty much in the same situation. So what I've done here, I got the Bondo on them right now, but basically I took out the old pin here, which was just a piece of 1/4-inch piano wire before. This is still 1/4-inch, but it's a 1/4-inch drill stock, so it's like a hardened steel. So what I've done here is, instead of having the elevator actuated from a bolt out here, which is how it was before, I now have an external linkage setup, which doesn't look great but works much nicer. So this is like a 1/8-inch carbon plate that I've made this out of, so it's all in one piece. So this thing is not going anywhere. The piece unfortunately wasn't long enough to go all the way to the end. Not a huge deal. Not worried about that breaking or anything. I also added lead to the front, so I balanced them out. So they're, well, I got Bondo on it now, so it's not as balanced, but they were balanced before I put all that Bondo on there. But anyways, yeah, and I stripped off all the paint, which actually was quite heavy. So this still had the original paint job on it, on top of like 4 other different paint jobs. So I had originally painted the airplane with a aircraft grade epoxy based paint, which was super heavy, and I painted the whole airplane with it. And after the first flight, it crashed, and I fixed everything. The paint didn't stick with the crap, and I ended up just scraping it all off with a 18 blade. But I didn't do the stabs because they were still looked nice, and I was like, oh, I'll just leave them. So I left those, but then I painted over them when I painted the whole airplane again for the first white paint job. So that was the second coat of paint on top of the primer and everything else that was on here. And then I painted them Dayglow orange, which there's still some right here, but this is like a 2-stage paint. So I painted them orange first, and then the Dayglow color, and then I painted them white again with some rattle can. So anyways, these things were stupid heavy. They're the same weight now as they were before, but with the added lead. It was like 2 ounces of lead, 2.5 ounces of lead to balance it. So it still weighs the same as it did before, which is crazy. So yeah, there was a lot of paint on these things, and they're huge. I mean, you might not think, because I'm holding it, they're not that big, but literally they're almost the same size as the wings on these jets that I'm building. So that should tell you about how big they are. Let me see if I can find something else. Let's see, that's a jet hanger saber wing. And actually, they're not that much smaller than the wings for this 9-foot T-38. So anyways, they're huge. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyways, so we're just doing body work. I'm really hoping to get some primer on all this today. Next weekend, I'm hoping to either paint it or just reassemble it primered. The whole airplane needs to be refinished. It's really rough. It's just banged up, dinged up. You can see bodywork is, the Bondo is shrunken from before. It's been it's 10 years old, or actually it's like 11 years old. So it's just beat up. There's dents in it everywhere. It's just hammered. It needs to be fully redone. So this will all be redone back here, tails and everything, obviously. So pretty much, I don't know if I'm going to do it right away, but I'm going to basically sand everything, body work everything, repaint this whole thing at some point. And I want to do a whole new cockpit. This cockpit it's not great. I actually think that this thing is doing this when it's flying because it has a funny humming noise as it goes by. I'm pretty sure it's this canopy making noise. But anyways, I want to do a full cockpit with full tubs. I have nose weight, so I have room to do stuff, and I can remove nose weight after doing a cockpit. So I want to do full cockpit, full pilot, better instruments, better canopies. I still have the plugs for the canopies. So anyways, I really want to make this thing nice. It's just got patches everywhere. It's all hammered. It really is just beat up. If you see this thing in the right kind of light, it looks terrible. So in the bright sunlight, you don't see pretty much any of it because the white is so bright. But anyways, that's where we're at. I got to do a bunch more body work, and maybe if I do end up getting primer on today, I'll throw a little clip in after this. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update on where the airplane's at. Now that the Panther is gone, I'm really itching to get this thing going because it flew really well with the turbines in it. So I'm excited to fly it some more with the new radio. With the improvements on the airplane, I should be able to fly it harder. So before I was kind of tiptoeing around the high-speed regime with this airplane just because I knew that there was areas of concern, being the tails. So now with the tails balanced, with a slop-free setup on the tail, with stiffer rods, with a stiffer tail, with all those improvements, I should be able to push the airplane a little bit harder to get a little bit more performance out of it. So anyways, that's where we're at. Alright, so we're almost there. Just finishing up some Bondo work on the stabs. But I got all the spot putty on the tail and the other section of the fuselage I have to fix. So letting that cure while I work on the tails. Yep, that's where we're at. Just a little bit more Bondo work, and these will be ready for the glaze as well. And then hopefully I can sand these and put some primer on everything tonight. So just to show you guys really quick, what I did for elevator mounts, you can see, or servo mounts, you can see the spots where the screws go. So basically this frame here was already here. It's 1/4 inch ply, and it's glued into the foam, and that was for my hatch. It was way overkill for a hatch, obviously, but so what I've done here is I've added some doublers for the screws. So now this is like a 1/2 inch thick of plywood for the screws to go into, and then I've put some stiffeners in here to tie this section into the rest of the frame. So when the servos are screwed in, they're snug up against these, so they don't move at all, even if the if the screws weren't in there. So once the screws are in, it's actually pretty strong. And even without the screws in there, it's really strong. So I've already powered the servos on with them hooked up, and it's really hard to get this to flex. So that's good news. So anyways, that's where we're at. And yeah, that's a sanding block, if you know what that looks like, if you've held one of those. Sometimes it's hard to imagine just how large this model is. And it's honestly a miracle it flies as well as it does on just 2 80-size turbines. Alright, so as you can see, it's perfect conditions for painting. I swear this winter has been a doozy. Anyways, alright, so I got all this sanded. Looks pretty good. I mean, you can see where all the red is still at was low spots, so a lot of heavy scratching from sanding and stuff like that. But coat of primer, wet sand that, and be ready for paint. Again, this being white, it hides a ton out in the sun, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And honestly, this thing had some really weird texture to it before. So this is 1-inch insulation foam that I just cut out and then hand sanded. It's not a core or anything like that. So on the insulation foam where it has like words on it, you know, there's some kind of, I forget what it has, but it has some kind of words. Well, I sanded all that, but even after I sanded it and glassed it and painted it, you could still see in the right light, you could see the writing on the foam. So anyways, that's no longer there, obviously, but you can see, so this green primer is pretty thick, but you can see kind of like the fiberglass texture in it. So when I first painted this, it looked way smoother, but over time, just all the fillers have shrunk. So see all these little white spots, those are all low spots now. So this is like, you can see the fiberglass weave right here. It's just, everything has shrunk over the years, and it's just gotten worse and worse. Like I said, if you look at this thing in the right light, let's see if you can, so you can see all the fiberglass texture in it on the surface. And that didn't used to be there when I first painted it. So anyways, like I said, this whole thing's getting redone at some point. But yeah, so primer, top coat, then I don't know what I'm going to do because I don't have the time to redo the whole thing right now because of all these events coming up and then travel for work and everything else. That'll probably be something I do during the summertime when there's not so many events and stuff. I really want to make a couple of events this spring with this thing. So anyways, the summertime I'll probably sand the whole thing again, even the tail stuff. I'll sand it all again, then respray the whole thing after I fix all the bodywork in it and everything. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Let me see if I can get some white primer on this thing. All right, wasn't so bad. So let's just rattle can Rust-Oleum. It might even look good enough after it dries just to leave it the way it is. Maybe put the panel lines back on it and get the decals for the tail again, and then just roll with it for now. We'll see how it looks when it dries, but I mean, it's not bad. I'm sure if it were sunny outside and you took it outside, it would probably look great. So that's the one nice thing about white. Anyways, I'll let that dry for a little bit. I gotta sand the stabs. You can see so the old paint is a little bit yellowed, so hard to tell in the picture, but you can kind of see from here forward it's a little bit more yellow. Again, if we had some natural light here, it'd be easier to tell, but good enough for now. We'll see how it looks when it dries. All right, so there we go. We got the stabs all primered. They're still wet, but yeah, looks like a T-38 again. Finally, geez. So the plan is to fly it this coming weekend, hopefully, if nothing goes wrong. Yeah, looks pretty good. So I think in the interim, what I'm going to do, this obviously will cure for a few days. I'm not going to touch it, but I'm probably just going to spray the orange in the tail, get some decals for the tail, and just get it back to where it was before as far as the scheme goes. Go with that, and then this summer probably tear it down for a full refinish, new cockpit, etc. Anyways, hope you guys liked the update on the T-38, and we'll see you in the next one.